I want to talk to you guys about something that's been coming up a lot, and this is a kind of thing on Poa Annua, Poa Trivialis, Poa this, Poa that, goosegrass, Dallas grass, all these other problem grasses, barnyard grass, foxtail. I don't know, I could sit here and name them all day long. Somebody even talked about Japanese stilt grass or something the other day, which I thought wasn't even something that happened in lawns. Or no, maybe it was rice grass. Rice grass. I found that in my weed book, and I saw somebody talking about that too. I will be the first to tell you that I cannot identify problem grasses in the lawn. The only one I can identify for sure shooting every time is crabgrass. And the reason why is because it's so telltale in its coloring and its growth habit and its time of year that it shows up. And because that's where all my experience is up north is with crabgrass, that's the one I know the most. All the other problem grasses, I cannot identify them, especially from one single picture on Facebook, which is what a lot of people are seeing. That's far back, maybe 20, 30 feet back, or even if it's in your hand, it's still 10 or feet back, and it's one flat, not a 3D picture. I can't look at the way it's rolled in the bud. I can't look at the root structure. I can't look at, how the leaves, blades come off. I can't see any of the ligules and all of these different things that I'm not an expert on, okay? But that I can just read about and follow some different types of tools. So that's the thing. It's really hard to identify that. And then you have the Poa Annua that everybody keeps talking about, that a lot of people get, that we can prevent for the most part. In a lot of cases, we'll talk about that come late summer and fall. Then you have Poa Trivialis, which is a whole nother thing, rough stalk bluegrass that is not an annual, and it does come back, but it can die off in the summer, and it's pale yellow in color, and I don't know a lot about Poa Trivialis. I don't. We just didn't seem to deal with that in the areas that I've lived, right? But I'm seeing this come in, and people are panicking because everybody's answer is different because nobody is identifying the grass properly. So you can see how this creates some panic in some people, creates some issues, and some people can get a little concerned about it. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some advice when it comes to problem grasses. And the first one is not to panic, okay? You're going to live at your house for a long time. Chances are your yard's been established for a long time, or maybe it's brand new, but either way, you got a long road ahead of you. In my last podcast, I talked about the infinite game versus the finite game. We don't have to win every single war right now. But what we do need to do is get the best information we can. We need to stick to the plan. We need to control the controllables, and we need to trust the process. And so the first thing you do when you have problem grasses is you try to mow them out. That's a cultural practice, and it's the number one thing you should do. Without a doubt, almost every time that I see somebody posting pictures of some problem grass that they have, the lawn needs to be mowed. If you would just mow it, you might mow it out. So the first piece of advice I have for you is, when in doubt, mow it out. Now, during that time, while you are doing that mowing, while you are trying to mow it out, I recommend that you go on the internet and search these key terms right here. Identification key to grass, weeds in turf. Search those words. Identification key to grass, weeds in turf. And you're going to look for the University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources website. It's UCIPM. Okay? University of California Statewide Integrated Pest Management Program. It's got dark blue at the top. It says UCIPM. Their website, they have the identification key to grass, weeds, and turf. And it's got this little kind of if this, then that tool that it takes you through. If the leaves are rolled in the bud, click here. If the leaves are folded in the bud, click here. And they show you pictures of it. Because problem grasses all look so similar. You've got to get down really close. You got to get down close to where the bud is, to where the ligule is, to where things are. And that's how you identify. And you click through this, and it will take you through, and then it'll ask you, is the ligule is a fringe of hairs, or is the ligule membranous? I mean, it's fun to read this. Is the ligule membranous, or is the ligule is a fringe of hairs? Really interesting artwork to look at, too. You'll learn a lot when you go through this. But at the end of it, it'll take you through all these things, and you will then identify the problem grass that you have. Now, in the meantime, you've been mowing, and in a lot of cases, you can mow it out. In other cases, they might tell you there is no cure for the problem. In a lot of cases, they might tell you that the pre-emergence will do it. In a lot of cases, they might tell you that post-emergence will do it. Now, that particular website, I don't think it's going to tell you what to spray on it, but it's going to at least help you get the ID. And that's the first thing you have to do because, as G.I. Joe says, knowing is half the battle. So once you have gone ahead and ID'd the problem, now you can look for what kind of control you want to take on that. And I still recommend, even if the mowing isn't working, that you try hand pulling. I highly recommend that you do that. I think a lot of times you guys see me in my videos and you see that I do a lot of weed control in my videos. And the reason I do that is because that's what people need to know about. But what you don't see is all during the week where I'm pulling weeds. But see, I don't need to teach somebody how to pull weeds. I can't do a video on how to pull weeds. Maybe I should. But the idea being is that's not something that I'm typically making videos on, but it doesn't mean that I'm not doing it. Now, you will notice if you watch my videos, I pull weeds in them quite a bit because I always hold the weed up in the camera and I go, look at those roots, John Perry. That's my way of giving a shout out to my friend and having a little fun with him. But it's also my way of showing you guys that I pull weeds. How many videos do you watch of mine where I pull a weed in that video? It's got to be at least 50% of them. And then the other good amount of time, I'm using my weed torch, which is propane, and I'm burning the weeds in the cracks. I'm not using chemicals for that. So I don't want you to always reach for a chemical first. Once you identify what it is, maybe it's just going to take a little bit of good old-fashioned hand pulling. Maybe it's going to take a little bit of what I call chop and drop, which is what I do with some of the problem grasses that I have here, like torpedo grass, that no matter what you do, you could glyphosate it and it will come back the next day because it will crawl underneath your house from your neighbors and you will get more. So there is no way to kill it, even with a torch, even with anything. You can't do it. So what do? I chop and drop. If I get an area that gets a real bad infestation of torpedo grass, I chop out, I go buy 3 or 4 squares of sod, I chop it all down to the ground, I get my torch out and torch it just because it feels good to torch it, and I let that cool off and I just drop sod, chop and drop. Now, that torpedo grass will come back. Sometimes it'll come back within 3 months if we get a lot of rain. Sometimes it may take 6 or 8, but I'm not using any chemical there. And I encourage you not to always reach for the chemical on the first try. Sometimes try to mow it out. What you're going to find is that a lot of these issues that you have, they're actually not even issues. A lot of times they're not even problem grasses. And that's the next point that I want to make. I want you to think about just how nature is. Not everything in nature is exactly the same color. Sometimes maybe sections of your lawn might get a little growth spurt. Maybe they'll jump up a little higher than others for whatever reason. And that growth spurt means that the chlorophyll doesn't get in there as much. Maybe they get zapped with cold at night when something else doesn't, and it just kind of knocks the color out of a little section of your lawn. It just grows too fast. I mean, I remember back when I started getting gray hair, everybody wanted to tell me reasons why I had gray hair. Maybe it was too much stress, or maybe I had one lady tell me I probably had diabetes, and that's why I was getting gray hair, all kinds of things. But really, what if my hair just turns gray? What if that's just the color of my hair? What if it's just the natural order of things? But I can tell you when I would cut my hair, it wouldn't look quite as gray. And if you cut your lawn, it's not going to, those light spots a lot of times are not going to show up. I don't know if that's a very good analogy there. I probably need to work on that one a little more. But the key there is that not every spot is a problem. Sometimes spots are just that. They're just spots and they just go away. Sometimes not every living thing looks exactly like the Photoshop picture that we see on iStock photos. Sometimes even grass can look a little different. It can be different shades. But as long as you keep everything trimmed and working together and growing together, it will all get along and it will all even out. So sometimes there's no problem grass at all. It's just a little bit of a color variation. Now, the last thing I want to say is that sometimes these problems are temporary, and by mowing, you can help keep the seeds from dropping. Whenever there's big nature events, like we had a ton of hurricanes that swept right up through the middle of the country last year. I know that, I think it was Pete from GCI was telling me that he saw that he had army worms come up into his territory way up in North Carolina. They don't get army worms, but the hurricanes blew them in. Well, I'm sure the hurricanes are blowing in seeds too and all kinds of other things. The other things hurricanes do is they actually do define heavy rain. If you want to ask me, Alan, can you define heavy rain? Yes, it's a hurricane. And in last year's case, I think there was 2 that swept up through there within a matter of several weeks or a couple months. That type of heavy rain can definitely bring stuff up from underneath that's been buried and gone and forgotten for a long time. But those problems can be temporary. If you just mow them out, they may not establish. They were buried and gone and forgotten for a reason. They've reared their ugly heads. Let's not let them catch a foothold. Let's not let them get sunlight. Let's mow our faces off and mow their faces off so that they'll go back to where they came from, back down to the depths, way down deep. And hopefully we won't get any more hurricanes. And the last thing I want to say, this is also why with these problem grasses that we talk about, I've already talked about earlier in the podcast how I don't like bringing in topsoil. I just don't know where it came from. That is not a knock on topsoil suppliers, but I'm just saying I don't know where it came from. The second reason or the second thing to think about is these burn downs. When you burn your lawn down, you're exposing it abnormally. A lawn is not meant to be completely bare, and when you hit everything with glyphosate, you are burning it down bare. Now, I understand there are times when you have to do that. I did it at my St. Pete house because I had a literal 100% salad bar. There was absolutely not one stitch of good grass there. So I had to burn it down. But a lot of you guys, you're just like, oh, I don't like my old school lawn, or I want to change from fescue to rye or whatever. I get it, and trust me, I do. I understand why you do that. It's fun, and I don't want to sound like I'm annoyed at you, because that's not the case. Sometimes I just want to be passionate about making a particular point to you, and again, I don't want to squelch your fun. But I will say that I caution you when you burn down, because when you burn down, you're opening up your lawn. You're opening up the sun to burn in there to areas deeper than it normally should. You're also killing off all the microbes and a lot of the soil organisms that are there that may keep things in balance and in check. And as John Perry has taught us, that when you get certain problem weeds in the lawn, it's telling you there's a problem in the soil typically. So that's one of the reasons I don't like the burn downs. And then, of course, when you do your seeding, now I recommend 2 sources of grass seed that I know have clean seed, certified seed, blue tag, gold tag, red tag, white tag, orange tag, black tag, silver tag, gold tag, bronze tag. They got all the tags. And that's going to be my friend Pete from GCI Turf Academy, or GCI Turf Services. If you go to his, just Google search GCI Turf. He sells turf type tall fescue, and it's the same blend that he's got at his house. He sells good seed, 100%, no doubt about that. I've seen tons of our people use his seed, and it has come off beautifully. It's high quality if you need some fescue. The other people I recommend are Seed Superstore. Drew over there, I've met Drew twice now, or had meetings with him, and just to listen to the way he talks, how he flies out to Oregon to source the seed. He makes his own inroads. He's been in the seed business for years. He makes relationships with the seed growers. He's got warehouses out there. He's got places in New York. He gets all these different, make sure these tags are like preserved. I guess there's some way that the tags stay preserved, and he has to pay extra for that, but he makes sure that his gold tags and all that and sod quality. I don't know all that stuff, but Drew, I should know that because Drew's educated me on it. The idea is I know his seed is good. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know what you guys are getting when you're going somewhere and you're getting landscapers mix or somebody else's mix, or, this is my Aunt Jane's seed mix that she's been growing in her backyard since 1970, award-winning mix. I just don't know what all that stuff is and what else you could possibly be bringing in. And it's not people doing something on purpose. I just don't know about everyone's ability to keep these crops pure. I just don't know that. So that's another reason why I recommend against all this burn down and bringing in seed. Now, if you're bringing in seed from my guys, if you're doing aeration and overseeding, not a burn down. And again, I don't get paid by Pete. Pete does not pay me for his seed, and Seed Superstore does not pay me for my seed. There's a lot of things I make money on, a lot of things I sell, but in those things, because I said a long time ago to myself that I didn't want to make money on grass seed because of this very issue. It's one of those hard things to explain to people. It's an easy thing to blame when you have problems, is your grass seed. So if you are doing that aeration overseed, realize you are keeping your turf grass there. This is another reason why I tell you to hit it hard all year and thicken it up and get it growing and get it going and get everything teamed up. That also gets the microbes kicked up. It gets the earthworms kicked up. It gets all the other soil fungi kicked up, everything kicked up, going, right? And then when you put that seed in there, yes, you're aerating, but aerating's only going down 3 inches. And most of you, when you pull cores, aren't even pulling 3-inch cores. You think it's 3 inches, but you need to go in and double check what 3 inches really looks like. But either way, that's as far out as you go, and that's where the roots are at anyway. That's not going to hurt anything. You're throwing down the good seed from my guys, and you're fine. You're not burning anything down. You're actually enhancing it. That's okay. And I don't think that's one of the cases here to this supposed outbreak of a lot of Poa Trivialis or other problem grasses that people are seeing. So there you go. Again, I think I might be creating a lot of controversy in today's podcast. So if this is the last one, I hope that you guys enjoy it. We shall see. And again, I might have been standing in this hot garage too long and I'm just not thinking clearly. And maybe some of you guys are eating this up and saying, yeah, I 100% follow you. So